that alchemy was kind of in this time a mixture of chemistry and magic,
Yes.
where there was still an idea that, well, there's something spiritual behind this.
Yes.
But at the same time, it is starting this, well, let's see, if we mix these different things, then they can do something that we didn't think they could do before.
Yeah. It's a similar analogy that we were the last episode with Claudius Ptolemy. We were saying the same about astrology and astronomy, no? Because the astrology makes something around the worldview of the Romans, and astrology get into more on the science astronomy. So the perfect meal was astrology. It's similar here in alchemy.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to Love Machine.
Welcome to another episode of Nerding Out with That Nerdy Catholic. I'm Seth Payne, and I'm here with my always co-nerd Cesar, and we are continuing our series on the history of physics. And before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you, if you go to thatnerdycatholic.com, you can sign up for our email list to get updates on when we put out new episodes and any updates that are going on in the Nerdy Catholic multi-universe, whatever we're going to call it. If you go over to thatnerdycatholic.com/merch, you can get t-shirts and mugs and some cool nerdy swag. Just remind you, we have the father of the Big Bang, Father George La Mancha, is one of our newest designs. If you head over to thatnerdycatholic.com/support, you can help support us financially. And I want to thank everyone so far that is given to our work and helped this mission of reaching out with the truth, both of our faith and of science.
Yep.
And so today we're talking about a character in the history of physics that is he's not really well known. But there's a lot of interesting things about him, and he seems like a lot of the people we've talked about really ahead of his time. So Cesar, who are we talking about today?
So we're talking about Dr. Mirabilis, Roger Bacon.
It's quite a title.
Yeah, it's quite a title. Actually, I don't know if we have Dr. Mirabilis titles everywhere else. I don't know. I may have to confirm that.
I looked it up, and it was a scholastic accolade, and it wasn't really clear to me who gave them out. It looked like it was common to have titles within the early universities.
Yeah.
And so there seemed to be a really interesting overlap with some of the doctors of the church. Yeah. So there's some of the, Thomas Aquinas had a special, scholastic accolade. There's some of the doctors of the church, but then there are others. Martin Luther had a special title, and we know he's not a doctor of the church. So
yeah. No, but there was something definitely that they found in this Franciscan Friar to give him this title. No? He was a philosopher, a mathematician, an astronomer, a physicist, a theologian, an alchemist, and also a Franciscan Friar.
Wow.
No?
So he's got all the bases covered.
Yeah. He was born in Leicester, Somerset, England, either in 1210 or 1220. So we are not sure about the exact date that when he was born. But the idea is that he came from a rich family. He had the opportunity to study math. He started astronomy, optics, theology. And in this process also, he has the opportunity to have the formula for the gunpowder to hold the European world. In that time, China came up with the formula, and it was a mystery. And he was one of the first to spread that formula to the European world. But the most important thing about him is that his relentless pursuit of experimental science. You try to prove what you said.
Right.
That is the one thing that if somebody takes about this video is about him is that relentless pursuit of experimental science, no, and this gave him kind of a special place, in let's say in the pre-modern form of physics.
He was well before the Enlightenment. So yeah, he was ahead of his time.
Definitely, he was ahead of his time, no, and Bacon always want to highlight the empirical solution, no. So if there's something that you said, you have to prove it by an experiment, and he tried always to do that. We will see that later in detail, but he became Franciscan Friar. But before becoming Franciscan Friar, he was also, have been a study, have been a teacher, has been a professor. So there's all of that in this character, no? But just to understand the importance of Roger Bacon, we have to understand what happened in Europe at that time.
Yeah.
No? So early 13th century, the end of the 12th century. What's going on in Europe here? No. So obviously the Crusades. The Crusades started in 1096, the first crusade. The last crusade was 1291. So it was way beyond Roger Bacon, but he born in the middle, kind of at the end of the period of the Crusades, no? Let's remember that the Kingdom of Jerusalem finally fall to the Muslim Empire in 1291, no? So but during that moment, there was this dispute between Christianity and Muslim for the Holy Land.
Yeah.
No? The second important thing, this is the early time of the rise of the university. No? We got University of Bologna signing in 1088, Oxford in 1096, Oxford the first English university in the world. No, University of Paris 1150, University of Cambridge in 1209. No, mostly all these universities driven by the Catholic Church. That's important to know. Even if you have the opportunity to visit any of these universities, you will see a lot of Catholic Church in the architecture, in the monuments. Not that much in the professors and in the students, but in the architecture and the monument. Yes.
Yeah.
No? That was the era of the constructions of the great cathedrals. No? So the knowledge that the people have at that time was to build something to honor God.
Yeah. Well, and it's my wife is an artist, and she paints one of the main things she paints is church interiors and exteriors. But I've had some really interesting discussions with her about the development of church architecture in that time and the leaps that they made as far as being able to make churches bigger, taller, to have the spaces inside, to not needing a bunch of columns. The developments that they came up with in that period were really great and brought about very beautiful cathedrals.
Yes.
I don't know if we'll ever be able to make churches like that again.
Yeah, that's true.
It would be so expensive right now.
We don't see that right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
modern churches are different.
Well, they're modern churches are much more affordable. And one of the things that was so interesting, like you said, that these churches, to have a little tangent, these churches were built by people that wanted to, as you said, to honor God, and people gave material, people gave their time, that you don't see anymore.
Yes, the medieval ages or the golden ages are this is a characteristic we will see. The centric of the life is not oneself, it's God. It's theocentric, no?
Yeah.
There was also an economic and cultural revival because the not only the kingdom of Jerusalem fall, but also the Byzantine Empire was in risk.
Mm-hmm.
So the commercial and the trade has to find new routes
Yeah.
in order to continue that exchange of knowledge. No,
Mm-hmm.
and also this is the golden age of the Islam. We see that Islam goes from Iran to the west, goes all of the middle of Asia,
And down
north
to
of
the north part
Africa,
of Africa, all the way
up to
to Spain. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So they have already entered Europe,
Mm-hmm.
no? And this was this constant battle with the
Mm-hmm.
Spanish and the Muslims
Mm-hmm.
at south of Spain, no? So this is the golden age of Islam right now,
Mm-hmm.
no? And we have a lot of development in math, science, technology from the Byzantine Empire and the Arab
Mm-hmm.
world
Mm-hmm.
being known by the West. Oh, again, product of this exchange of commerce. There's also
Mm-hmm.
exchange of knowledge,
Yeah.
exchange of
Ideas.
ideas. Exactly, no. And we, as was mentioned before, we see the golden age of the Catholic Church because at that time, not right now, that the let's say the common denominator of man is to is centered on looking in himself and his pleasure. This was the center of the life was to serve their soul and to expand and live for the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
That was, if you remember the knights of the Middle Age, there
Mm-hmm.
was, I fight for my God,
Mm-hmm.
my king,
Yeah.
and my wife. No?
Yeah.
So there was this traditionally strong
Yeah.
focus on God
Right.
and saving the souls and doing for a higher purpose. No?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I would say even as you said, this is also the golden age of Islam.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still in a period where no matter what you believe,
Mhm.
you have a belief.
Yes.
I would say I would probably doubt there weren't many atheists that
Yeah.
didn't believe in anything.
Yeah. Or nobody was saying, I believe in science. Anyhow. So what about his life? He was born in a wealthy family, no?
Mm-hmm.
But due to some fightings between nobles, their family lost their fortune,
Mm.
no? But anyhow, he was able to be trained on the different science, arithmetic,
Mm-hmm.
geometry. At that time in the schools, we have the trivium and the quadrivium. That was normal. That was the standard that the Catholic Church
Mm-hmm.
teaches. The trivium was grammar, logic, and rhetoric, no?
Mm-hmm.
And we have the quadrivium, which is arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy.
Mm-hmm.
No, so there in that you see a lot of knowledge condensed
Yep.
in 7 subjects.
Yeah. Well, and it's very interesting. We've talked about this before, but my daughters go to a classical school, and you can see the basis for that. Grammar, logic, rhetoric. How to understand your language, and to know how to think and know how to argue. To this trivium, that kind of that basis of how do you think.
Yes.
And then looking at the quadrivium, getting deeper into knowledge through arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy.
And that's a very important point that you are highlighting, because nowadays education is more, memorizes things, memorizes knowledge. Which I'm not against knowledge. I'm against memorizing knowledge and not asking why. No.
Yeah. The difference between learning something in order to understand it.
Yes.
Or versus learning something just to know some facts.
Yes, exactly. And I love that in this era, they teach you how to think, how to argue. And it was more likely that people get into agreement because they have dispute, they have argument, they have debates, and they see each other points. So they say, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." No.
Yeah.
Contrary to the thinking, this was a more logical approach that people has.
Yeah.
No?
If you look at even 100 years ago, the author G.K. Chesterton wrote a book called Heretics, and he talked about a number of different characters, a number of different figures in his time, and he talked about where some of the ideas that they had that were good and some of the ideas that were heretical. The name of the book, Heretics. But the thing about Chesterton, all of these characters, he was friends with them.
Mm-hmm.
He could debate them. He could have arguments with them, and they were intelligent arguments.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they were still friends, and because they had this basis of being able to the rhetoric, be able to make intelligent arguments, but you were arguing ideas.
Yes.
You weren't arguing with the person.
Yes.
And so this trend of just memorizing facts and not being able to have the rhetoric behind it, you can't have those debates with someone and then be friends with them, because you're just spouting facts back and forth, and what it turns into is, you just must be a bad person because you know the wrong facts, right? So this idea of this, this basis of education with these focuses is so important.
It is, and he continued also his education in Oxford University at that time, no, and after that, he was. We have some records about Roger Bacon, no? Speaking before the King of Oxford in 1233, no. So that's really important, no. And he has after that. So just to get a summary of his life, he went after Oxford. He went to University of Paris, no? And in that place, he has the opportunity to lecture in grammar, Aristotelical logic, arithmetic, geometry, math, aspect of astronomy, and music. No, that is really important, because you can see that also the spread of knowledge at that time, it was not that much. I don't think that somebody can master all this science with the same depth that somebody in the 12th century could have, Roger Bacon. But we can say definitely that he was into knowledge, and he has the basics what it requires to start experimentation of physics.
Yeah.
No?
Well, and what's the term that we use for someone that's like that? We call him a Renaissance man. And this, as we said, he was hundreds of years before the Renaissance.
Yeah, before his time, definitely. Yeah. One of the important facts that we have to remember when he was during his time in Paris, what he had the opportunity to work and to learn with, at that time, Alberto Magnus, Peter of Spain, who later will become Pope John 21. No, and also, while in this time, he gave the direction of how to make the gunpowder, no? Which is something really important, because that was a Chinese discovery that was spread by the Arabic world, and of course came as a disadvantage to the Western world. The fact that somebody came with the formula, this is the correct ingredients to build gunpowder, that was revolutionary for the Western civilization.
Yeah. No? Yeah.
So he was in Paris, and again, the important thing of his staying in Paris is that he learned a lot of people, and a lot of people that will become Pope later. No? That's going to play a key influence in the later development of his life. No? But around 1247, he left Paris and returned to Oxford. No? And one of the things that is a mystery during 1247 to 1257 is that during that decade, we don't know exactly what he was on to, but we know that he must have studied Greek, Arabic, and the word of optics, alchemy, astronomy, and math from the Greek and Arabic word. No, so he studied foreign language. He's not only versed in Latin, he's also versed in Greek and and Arabic, which is something that is not common known for the Western world.
Yeah.
No?
Well, as you said, a lot of the, as we talked about in the history of math, there was that long period where there wasn't much development in the West, and a lot of the development in especially in mathematics, but also in science, was happening in the Arabic world and in India. And so in this time, there's at the kind of the beginning of this new period of understanding in Europe. Well, where are you going to learn a lot of that stuff from? It's going to be from the Arabic world.
And that is important thing because, as you said, the development came from the Arabic world, came through the Byzantine Empire, an empire that is dying. People are getting out from the empire that is dying and getting to the West. No? And the fact that he was able to understand that give him a great advantage over other people. But the second thing I want to bring to the attention of learning Greek is, you remember there are part of the Bible that were in Greek too. No?
Yep.
So he was able, because of that, he was able to get to early sources of the Bible, not the traditional Latin translation done by Hieronymus. No?
Yep. And so the importance of learning Greek, one of the things I remember learning a couple of years ago is the translation of the Old Testament that Jesus and all of the early Christians used. It's called the Septuagint. And it was translated into Greek.
Oh.
And all of the New Testament books were written in Greek. Yeah. So if you understand Greek, you can understand, as you said, some of the more earlier translations of the Bible. You can go right to the original source. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's a really good point. So what did he do during these 10 years? We speculate that he started building his own alchemy laboratory. He started spending some money on researches, on getting instruments, on getting tables in order to do the experiments. We also see that he was probably doing experiments about optics because of the access of the knowledge from the Arabic words on the documents that they wrote about optics and that, no? Lenses and mirrors, no? This is really important, no? He studied also the nature of light and the rainbow, no? So we are talking about Newton knowing from how but he also has early studied about the lights and how rainbow is generated, no? And so we speculate that because we find right now we are moving from 1247 to 1257. He entered the Franciscan order, order of minor orders, no? But when he entered his Franciscan minor order, he was known to be kind of the magician that do weird things in his tables. So that's why we speculate during these 10 years he started developing
that's when he learned all of it. Yeah.
Yes, no? So he entered into the Franciscan order, but then, let's say in 1257, and in 1260, we got a prohibition from Franciscan orders to stop publishing books about natural philosophy. Why is that? No, because there was a book the heretical work that was published by Gerard of Borgo, San Donino, in 1254. So the Catholic Church looked at this and basically he was trying to say that due to the new discoveries, we have to review what was the true content of the Bible. Say, well, the interpretation of the Bible relies on the Catholic Church. So what's going on here with the Franciscan friars? Okay,
Yeah.
Let's stop publication. This is really important. They didn't stop the study of science.
Mhm.
What they stop is the publication
Right.
of that.
Right.
No.
Right. Well, and this is an issue that, as we know, will last for hundreds of years,
Yes.
all the way to Galileo. But this tension between the church and people that are studying science, and as we've talked many times before, it's not that the church is against science, but when you're studying science in order to understand the world, that's one thing. But when you, as you said, when you go to the point where you say, okay, well, now this is how, because of these experiments, this is how I understand the world. Therefore, I need to reinterpret Scripture.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Let's always remember that the interpretation of the Scripture is through the church, guided by the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
No. So and we will see that there's no conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Because while this other person was trying to get into the heretical world on that, Roger Bacon didn't.
Mm-hmm.
No, and we will see also that again the church didn't stop Bacon to do their work.
Mm-hmm.
They just stop the Franciscan Friars to stop publishing to avoid another misinterpretation of science getting
Mm-hmm.
into
Mm-hmm.
the general public. No?
Mm-hmm.
So that's really important. No, as you said, the church never stopped. On the contrary, they were Franciscan friars doing science. No,
Right.
It's really important. No, so during this prohibition, that is a we have to understand this development of the events. No, so he know the guy that is know that guy of Fulcos that he start texting to this bishop
Mm-hmm.
that
Writing letters, not
right.
not
Texting.
sending
Yes.
text.
Writing letters to this bishop. I am in the middle of doing some experiments here, but
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I am a Franciscan friar,
Mm-hmm.
and as a Franciscan friar, I am not, I have the votes for poverty, for obedience, and for chastity.
Yeah.
No, so the votes for poverty prohibited him to have their own things,
Mm-hmm.
no, to use their own or their family money. So he said, I was in the middle of these experiments, but I cannot continue because of lack of money.
Mm-hmm.
And would you like to help me? And a little bit of this is that he went outside, as a beggar also to find some money to continue his experiment. But of course, that wasn't enough. No.
Mm-hmm.
So he asked the help of the bishop. The bishop, okay, I will fund your projects. No.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one important statement. No. So he was happy about that, and then he started to develop this word, but he didn't want to get into the conflict. Look at that obedience.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want to get into the conflict, so he started to develop this in secrecy.
Mm-hmm.
He's an exceptional guy. Most of Franciscan minor friars are lay people, normal people that doesn't know even other language that English at that time in England.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine Roger's Bacon cell with a lot of tables and rare artifacts. The other guy will say, what is this guy doing? Is this sorcery? Is this something?
Yeah.
So they got suspicious about him. No?
Well, and as we've said, he was so early in, he was ahead of his time in his experimentation that, now, we all know what a lab looks like.
Mm-hmm.
We might not understand everything in it,
Yeah.
but we know what a lab looks like. And we're like, oh, we see someone with a table with all these beakers and all this other equipment. We're like, oh, that person's doing science.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, people didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And so you look at something, you're like, oh my goodness, he's taking these things, he's mixing them together, they're changing colors. It's like, oh my, he's doing magic.
Yes, exactly, and that's what exactly they thought. So and I would like to highlight here his prudent mind say, I would like to keep this in secret, so
Mm-hmm.
not to.
Well, he doesn't want to scandalize
Exactly.
the other brothers. Yeah.
Yes. But in his letter, I want to quote one of the letters that he wrote to, that bishop later became Pope,
Mm-hmm.
no? And he was Pope Clement IV, no?
Mm-hmm. You're showing me that this letter, this relationship, as you said, he had with his bishop, and this bishop that later became, Pope Clement IV. And so, yeah, it's really interesting that this letter you showed me. He said he wrote this letter to Pope Clement IV. As your holiness did not write to them to excuse me, and I could not make known to them your secret, because you had commanded me to keep the matter as secret. They did not let me alone, but charged me with other labors. But it was impossible for me to obey because of your commandment. So, yeah, so it's interesting that he wanted to continue his work and his experiments, and he was doing it with the help of now Pope Clement IV. But he wanted to, as we said, he didn't want to scandalize his other brothers, and so you can see this tension in him. I think if someone tried to make a movie about him today, they would probably look past that spirit that he had and kind of give him this. Well, I gotta seek truth no matter what people think. It doesn't matter what other people think of me. He cared about what his other brothers thought.
Yes.
And because people didn't really understand what he was doing, they thought, oh, he might be dabbling in magic or the occult.
Yes.
That could really harm the faith of his other brothers.
Yes.
And so, yeah, he said he put that above.
Yes.
Above his work.
And that obedience and that taking care of his brothers is that make him life a little hard, because the Franciscans say, oh, this guy is getting into magic, let's get them some labor to do instead of and one of the rules is obedience. So if the superior say you have to do it, you have to stop whatever you're doing and do what your superior does. No, so he's writing the Pope on his spirit. I want to continue, but I want to keep it a secret. I don't want to scandalize, but it's getting hard to hard. No. Nevertheless, in 1 year after he wrote this letter to the Pope, he was able to take 3, not 1, but 3 documents. No, Opus Maius, the great work; Opus Minus, the lesser work; and Opus Tertium, the third work. No, so he wrote 3 books in a span of 1 year.
Wow!
In these conditions, that is something to highlight.
That shows his dedication and his discipline, and the fact that it probably took him a while to figure out the best way to do that, but the fact that he was able to write those works while keeping his vow of obedience.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in the early 12th century, magic was a thing. No, but let's take into the context what that magic means. So we know that most of the guys, like in that time, they didn't know about alchemy, which is the precursor of chemistry. Let's say like that.
Well, and I think that alchemy was kind of in this time a mixture of chemistry and magic.
Yes.
Where there was still an idea that, well, there's something spiritual behind this.
Yes.
But at the same time, it is starting this. Well, let's see, if we mix these different things, then they can do something that we didn't think they could do before.
Yeah. It's a similar analogy that we were the last episode with Claudius Ptolemy. We were saying the same about astrology and astronomy, no? Because the astrology makes something around the worldview of the Romans, and astrology get into more on the science astronomy. So the perfect mean was astrology. It's similar here in alchemy, I would say.
Yeah.
I completely
Yeah.
agree with you on
Yeah.
that one. No.
Well, and a quick aside, a really great book
Mm-hmm.
that I'd recommend is G.K. Chesterton wrote a book on St. Francis.
Oh.
And it's interesting talking about the Franciscans here. But one of the things he talked about, because St. Francis was, in the, beginning of the second millennium,
Mm-hmm.
that the 1,000 years between the time of Christ and the time of St. Francis, just over 1,000 years, he talks about it as this shift, this period of a purification of the pagan religions that came before Christ. That it wasn't that Christ came and boom, everyone's a Christian and everyone throws away these pagan ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So this period of transition fits in perfectly with this idea of astrology and astronomy.
Mm-hmm.
Astrology kind of shifting into astronomy.
Mhm.
The reason why people studied the stars early on was because of astrology, looking at the stars for signs, and it shifted towards the pure science of astronomy.
Yep.
Alchemy, this use of materials for magic means,
Mm-hmm.
shifting into chemistry.
Yep.
And so Roger Bacon, just at the end of this period, really kind of ushering in the beginning of this period of experimentation.
Yes.
Above, well, there must be some magic behind it.
Yeah, and that's what exactly he thought. He thought that there was some magic behind it. He didn't have any word. The word chemistry was not there
Mhm.
yet.
Mhm.
But he said that it was perfectly okay to put this as long as it only involves natural means and
Mhm.
never demonology, nor astrology,
Mhm.
not idolatry or any other thing. No. So he pursued what he called the virtues of nature. No,
Mhm.
if we combine the secret virtues of nature, something we may come up. No, but he was against any idols, any invocations to the occult, any.
Mhm.
So as we said, he was pursuing chemistry, but the word didn't came. He's
Mhm.
still thinking about some magic that is some property of nature that we haven't yet discovered,
Mhm.
which is in fact true.
Mhm.
No, his word was virtue of nature,
Yeah.
but we can translate that to property of nature and say
Yeah.
that and if we say that, for example, for a kid, you combine two things and then boom, something more colorful and nice came out. Wow, that's magic.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not the magic per se that will say, this guy is into the occult or demonology. No, it's the properties of nature that we are starting to discover.
Yeah, as you said, he didn't have the language yet
Yes.
to explain the science behind it, but he was starting to see that no, there's logic here, and I can
Yes.
run these experiments, and I can come up with predictable results.
Exactly. And that was his pursuit. But you can imagine the Franciscan friars getting a guy, with a big thing, heating up a pot to mix the ingredients there. They would be thinking this guy is a sorcerer or something like that.
He's trying to come up with some sort of witch's potion. Right?
Yes, exactly.
He's trying to get rid of warts or.
That's true, But then on his book, The Vanity of Magic, he debunks the esoteric claims, showing that all what we call magic could be explained by natural phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
That is really important. No, he wrote these 3 books during that time, but those are not the only 3 books. He wrote more books, no, and one of them is saying that in his words, that magic can be explained by natural phenomena. No, he also dived into the medicine of Galen, and because he was able to know that from the Arabic word and his Greek background. No, but then something really bad happened. No, in 1268, Pope Clement died, and he lost his protection.
Mm-hmm.
No, so after that, he still do some experiment, but 1268 his protector died, and in 1277 there was a proscription from 2019 thesis by Stephen Temper, a bishop of Paris, no, condemning 13 propositions as heretical. No, and this was, as again, we have to take into consideration that some people do this experiment in the name of magic. Some people do this experiment in the pursuit of truth. No, and the prohibition was there.
Most people didn't understand what he was doing. So you have this pope that did understand what he was doing and why he was doing it.
Yeah.
Once he died, you have people that all they know is, as you said, is that when someone is doing this, it must be magic.
Yes.
It must be part of the occult. Therefore, there must be something wrong that he's doing.
Yes. And in this time, there are some scholars that say that he was in prison. Some others that say that imprisonment was an invented thing. So I will leave that to your discretion, because they don't agree on what happened later to him.
It's not clear.
It's not clear. But we will say that he continued to do his own experiments until he died around 1292 or 1294 in Oxford. No, so here is Roger Bacon that, a little later he was given Doctor Mirabilis title.
Oh, he was given it posthumously. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and that title I think is so interesting. And when I was looking at the scholastic accolades, there were, I think it was like 40 or 50 of them given to different people. But each one of them were unique.
Oh.
There was not. He was the only Doctorus Mirabilis, or the wonderful doctor.
Yes.
So people recognized the contributions that he made, but it also feels like that there was it also included his character. That I can see that, well, people look back at his life, not just what he did, but how he lived, and said, wow, what a wonderful doctor.
He didn't have to break into he was obedient. He did many things. What the reason for what he did was because he cared of his Franciscan brothers. That maybe those Franciscan brothers didn't have that because he didn't want to scandalize them. That's something that really important to highlight. No.
Yeah.
There are many things that I would like to say, but I want to get into his major work, which is Opus Majus. So we want to see what this is. An more than 800-page document that he wrote, no, in medieval Latin. Yeah, that's one of the documents by hand in less than a year, because he wrote 3 documents in a year, but this was the major one. So there are 7 parts. No, let's go quickly into what are those 7 parts. Part 1 consider the obstacle of real wisdom and truth, classifying the causes of error into 4 categories. What are the 4 categories that he thinks causes an error? Following a weak or an unreliable authority. That's 1. That came true until today, I think.
Yeah.
Custom. This is what we do because we always do this thing, as always.
Without understanding it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The ignorance of others, and concealing one's own ignorance by pretended knowledge. Here I am I don't know, but I will pretend that I know.
Well, it's a good thing that none of those exist anymore.
Do you want to read part 2, please?
Yeah. Part 2 considers the relationship between philosophy and theology, concluding that theology, and particularly Holy Scriptures, is the foundation of all sciences. Yeah, that's really interesting. That is, I think we can take this whole part of this book as a thesis for our channel. I mean, this is why we're doing what we're doing.
Yes.
That and I think it's interesting, that last part. Theology and particular scripture is the foundation of all sciences, because, as we said, all truth comes from God.
Yes.
And like we were talking about a few episodes ago with the ladder, theology
Yeah.
at the top and the natural sciences at the bottom.
Yes.
And to say that, we see what God does, but we do science to understand it.
Yes.
So it's not like they're two different worlds, two different truths. Theology is the basis of everything, but we need to do the science, the natural philosophy, the natural science, in order to understand it better.
I completely agree. Part 3 is a study of the biblical language, Latin, Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic, as knowledge of language and grammar is necessary to understand the revealed wisdom. No?
Yeah.
He's advocating to go to the early source to better understand what was going on, which is really important.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. Part 4 contains the study of mathematics. As a part of the study, he vividly drew out the flaws of the Julian calendar, proposed to drop a day every 125 years from 325, from the Council of Nicaea in 325. He also noted the shifting of the equinoxes to the solstices.
He's the first guy to know that there was a mistake in the Julian calendar.
Wow. Wow, and that wasn't adopted, for a while after that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Part 5 contains the study of optics. Now, a study of the part 5 seems to draw on the work of Arabic word, including the discussion of philosophy of eyes, physiology of eyesight, the anatomy of the eye and the brain, and considers light, distance, position, size, direct vision, reflected vision, refraction, mirrors, and lenses.
Wow. I think each one of these parts we could do multiple episodes in. Yeah. Now, forgive my pronunciation. This is about part 6, De Scientia Experimentalis, a study of experimental science.
Yes.
It includes a review of alchemy, the creation of gunpowder, and the positions and sizes of the celestial bodies. It anticipates later inventions such as microscopes, telescopes, spectacles, flying machines, hydraulics, and steamships. The occult overtones of this section reflects Bacon's interest in magic, which he also wrote about in De Secretis Oberibus Artis et Naturae, et de nullitate Magi.
Yeah. So that is the last part. Part 6 is a lot. Lenses, flying machines, hydraulics. The last part is the Secretis Operibus Artis of Naturae. Is if we want to translate it to English, is the secret operation of the art in nature. Nullitate, it means eliminating the magic.
Yeah.
It is really interesting. He's literally saying that there's a property that we have to experiment. We don't necessarily have to rely on magic.
Well, and it's so interesting. What is one of the main arguments of many atheists against any religion?
Yeah.
It's like, well, what you say is magic or spiritual is just something we don't understand yet.
Yeah.
As if you have any sort of religious faith, then you don't care about the science.
Yeah.
And yet here's a Franciscan brother that, over 700 years ago was saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Saying, we have to look past what we think of as magic and study it, because there's some natural property that we can understand.
Yes. And part 7 considers the moral and philosophy and ethics, no? The most controversial ideas came from, also because he was influenced by the Arabic, Islam, and Indian philosophy, no? So these 7 parts are his biggest work. We don't have time to follow up with the other, but this is a very good sum of what is he has done during his lifetime, no? So I would like to conclude this episode with some key conclusions here. No, the first one is that the scholars of Oxford University, starting, you will find then that most of them were religious priests. No, they were not the natural person. Most of them were religious priests that start funding and teaching in Oxford University as well as in other universities.
Mm-hmm.
No? So we see a Catholic Church very involved in the born of university.
Mm-hmm.
No. The second one is the life of the Roger Bacon. No, is another example of faith and science does not contradict.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it is does not also not contradict, but it's complementary.
Mm-hmm.
No, he didn't drop his faith because of science. He
Mhm.
didn't drop his science because of he wanted to pursue science.
Right. Right.
He knew how they go together.
Right. Well, and even thinking about his work with, in light of his vow of obedience,
Yeah.
the fact that he did not throw away his vow of obedience because of his science,
Yes.
and he didn't throw away his science because of his vow of obedience. He worked really hard to continue his work, and at the same time do whatever he could to not scandalize his brothers.
Yes. Yes. And showing that he really cares about
Mhm.
them.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The other thing is that he was really deep into empirical science. No?
Mhm.
He's not just a book reader and say, "Oh, okay, that's that." He read something and tried to do an experiment and came up with it.
Mhm.
And so that his brother were thinking, "Hey, this should be a magician." No,
Mhm.
he has his chemistry lab there.
Mhm.
That's what early chemistry lab, but
Yeah.
chemistry lab at the end. no?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is another very important thing. No, the development of science was the purpose of the development in science was for gaining souls for the Holy Church. No,
Mhm.
his love of science was a mean, not an end. No, to itself, like centuries later during the Enlightenment. No,
Mhm.
and we have to see that into the context of the Islamic war. The Islamic war were getting into Europe.
Mhm.
They have the gunpowder.
Mhm.
They have many advantages that the Western Europe didn't have.
Mhm.
His holy purpose was we have to understand what are the words, what are the equipment of
Mhm.
our threats,
Mhm.
so we can combat them.
Mhm.
No,
Mhm.
and we can expand the kingdom of heaven, of God, not the
Yeah.
kingdom of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Well, and also this, as we said, the understanding of the world that God created.
Yes, yes. And that's point number 5. No, he believed that using science, certain aspects of spirituality, divine wisdom could be logically explained. No,
Mhm.
understand the world that God has created.
Mhm.
No, that's really important.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was also concerned about the growth of Islam.
Mhm.
Remember the map where he put Islam was almost the whole, Africa, Asia, and the south part of Spain. That was a
Mhm.
big chunk and
Yeah.
continue to grow.
Yeah.
No?
It's hard for us to, I think, understand in our modern days is that he was surrounded by conflict
Yes.
and warfare.
Mhm.
And so this fear of Islam was not necessarily wasn't just these are different ideas
Yeah.
that we need to be afraid of. No, these were conquering armies.
Yes.
They were coming for them.
Yes, that's true. That's true. That's a very important distinction. That it was not per Islam per se; it was the army
Mm-hmm.
that
Coming with the gunpowder.
Yes, yes, something that they didn't know.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
that's true. No, he urged the Pope to modify the Tribune and the Quadrivium to include, most of this knowledge that he has studied. No,
Mm-hmm.
and this is really important because he wants to perfect the university. No,
Mm-hmm.
but he wrote a letter to the Pope suggesting, urging him, this is what I discovered. Can you help me? Can we put this in the university?
Mm-hmm.
We know at the end that the Pope that support him died, and that
Mhm.
didn't went well. But he was always in obedience with the Catholic Church, so
Mhm.
different than what Luther did centuries later.
Mhm.
But he was really concerned about that, and he wants the education to be perfected,
Mhm.
for not only for the friar, but the universities is for the whole people.
Yeah. He wanted this this world, this experimentation to be able to be something that anyone could do.
Yes. And he was so ahead of his time that his ideas was taken into consideration and implemented during the counter-reform
Mhm.
centuries later,
Mhm.
when the bridge was opened there.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if his idea was implemented at that time?
Yeah.
It would be a
Could we have avoided the Reformation? Who knows?
We
Who knows?
We don't
Yeah.
know. But it baffles me that, centuries later, there's a guy, Roger Bacon, from 3 centuries before. These are good ideas. Why don't we do this?
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. Well, we're human, and as we all know, sometimes humans are a little bit stubborn.
Yeah.
A little bit thick, but there, I think, as we've seen in many other times, that sometimes people are just ahead of their time.
Yes. And I think this was the case of Roger Bacon.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us on this other episode of Nerding Out, and thank you for being part of this conversation. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Roger Bacon, on his life, and this idea of someone being ahead of their time. But I think one of the most important things, looking at the life of Roger Bacon, he was ahead of his time with his experimentation, with his understanding of the sciences, but at the same time, he wanted to follow what was most important to him, was his faith, his vow of obedience as a Franciscan, and that I'm sure that caused him a lot of anxiety, but still, that was important to him, and that's what he followed. Is what he saw is what was most important to him. So please, any thoughts you have, leave them in the comments below, and we want you to be a part of this conversation as well. I want to remind you, if you go to thatnerdycatholic.com, you can sign up for our email list, get updates on what's going on in our videos, our programs, and what we're working on. If you head over to thatnerdycatholic.com/merch, you can get t-shirts and mugs and other cool merch. If you go to thatnerdycatholic.com/support, you can help us out financially, and we want to thank everyone that has helped us so far. It has been an encouragement to us. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you very much.
God bless.
System shut down.